Chapter 1. Misconceptions. I remained at the store until age 30 and was unhappy by then, and preparing my departure. I felt completely stuck in a career field so desperately despised, and the ordeal was like sticking pins in your eyes. In practical format, I have highlighted potential stories all written, ready for a book, relationships further down the line, and more in depth regarding neighbour dispute, more in the next chapter. From having no qualifications at the start, it was a slow marathon with negative workplace grief that played havoc with my mindset, the sort that most feel doing a job they despised but persisted showing up for that paycheck, paying into a company incentive scheme before making the break. At that stage, I completed my secondary education, got a job as a part-time lifeguard, and had gained many fitness qualifications along the way. This gave me the confidence to rebel against the store managers and staff. It was carnival against herbivore, with one and other sizing up introverted style. I've never been big on going out with the lads, as I was mainly considered awkward. So I was saving money without checking the amounts in my bank account for that golden nest egg. I even had accounts that had not touched since childhood and matured in my absence. Plus, I'd accumulated bonds in company schemes which had matured well, which is delusional as the scales are more tipped in their favour. For not checking my bank balances, I've accumulated a huge amount of money, and as a council tenant, it meant that I could pay my place outright with the maximum discount of 62%. I inquired purchasing my own property and going for a mortgage. I was successful with the process, and Building Society gave me the loan to begin with. Once I realised having the funds sitting in low interest accounts, I immediately paid it off with no penalty charges. I've been thinking about going to Oz for 1 year and began preparing. I have written out the stepping stones below as I thought they were going to serve me well. Only problem was that I interpret the images from watching soap operas like Neighbours Home and Away. As a child would, I envisioned it to be a laid-back country with sun, sea, sand, and related it to the beach lifestyle destination. This is how I went about it. Before Australia, unbeknownst at the time, I've already taken some steps to form the plan to clarify understanding. I remained covert throughout and began the Great Escape and became a R2 type character out of Star Wars. So in September of 2006, with this stereotypical image in my mind, I decided to do a beach lifeguard course down at St Ives, Cornwall, as it was a week's intense course, and I passed it with flying colours and returned to the treadmill of life. Along this, I also enrolled in a swimming courses to become a fully qualified swimming teacher from September to December. I travelled to Hitchin to do it instead of Peterborough over consecutive weekends whilst working at the leisure centre. It became very intensive, way beyond my ability at the time, and found that the staff unhelpful. Not surprisingly, I didn't pass all the course modules and did resits. Very common for neurodivergents who swallow the syllabuses and often overlook for the quirkiness of being misunderstood. I became frustrated and acted out on of impulse. Thoughts went through my mind of feeling inadequate, so I took the steps in becoming a lorry driver and passed the medical and theory tests, which whilst keeping my mouth shut and using unauthorised absences from work. It was Christmas. I did a 3-day intensive lorry driving course to gain a Class 2 licence during the unseasonably mild January of 2007. I kept quiet about this and pulled a sickie. I went to Northampton for the training instead of doing it in Peterborough to avoid the risk of being spotted. The instructor was ex-army and shouted at me like never before. In the lorry, I was a nervous wreck and kept making cock-ups, which is a type of caring method in the military. They often shout and scold at you abruptly to mould you into a tool of their choice. Unlike civilian life, where the going is much gentler and sensitive. I didn't pass first time and went again a month later and passed the practical. It wasn't easy keeping it a secret from listening ears. Again, I skived work and formulated another sickie. Meanwhile, I continued to apply for jobs, and despite getting interviews, the outcomes was zero. I became frustrated with the constant rejection and acted in protest. This couldn't be happening, stating to no one in particular. And it fits in why countries like the UK population displaying poor attitudes towards work. The thing about people is they have unlimited potential to improve, and many people who are aware seem unable to make financial strides. For me, it was frustrating and resulted further into being treated as a scapegoat for family and most work colleagues. From a double booking, the store's Christmas party was delayed until May. A week before, I went to Cornwall and enrolled on a lifeguard TA assessor's course to train lifeguards. Again, I passed, and that enabled me to do staff training at the leisure centre. This time I did use annual leave. Feeling invisible, I went to store's Christmas party feeling a natural high. I missed the previous one for obvious reasons, down to conflicting histories. So I arranged for some work colleagues to come to my flat and we started drinking. I thought having a separate party would be a way of kicking dirt in the store's face. But the work colleagues who visited felt gravitated to attend the store's works gathering, which in my mind wasn't going to go down well. I was still thinking about the working holiday visa and the excitement of becoming a TA. I was in no mood for work politics, but went anyway as a meat body statistic. Whilst music blared through the speakers that had better audio days, the disco lights acting as a low quality vibe in a large hall, witnessed at the works Christmas party, was a male supervisor slobbering all over the female store manager, and that was the final straw. I wanted the attention and wasn't getting it due to rank or indifference. So I took it upon myself to smash up the venue. First I would stack some glasses in the form of skittles, like at a 10-pence bowling alley, then pick up some glasses or bottles on another table and aim them at the arrangement. Each was a successful hit with the glass shards and liquid splattering all over the floor. Nobody came. I then stampeded to the buffet table and tipped all the food over onto the floor before a bouncer intervened. He told me to leave, and I felt left without being manhandled. I found another bar soon after and reflected upon the carnage and found it amusing. I wasn't drunk at all and pretended to fool everyone in the process. I recall not feeling guilty, and from previous encounters of disciplinary hearings, I was becoming familiar with the way they were conducted. They thought of me as unintelligent, and I decided to play that card in my favour. After all, it was free training and got me away from interacting with customers. After fooling them, I applied that weekend for the working holiday visa and was successful. Sometimes you can overthink things and not act. After purchasing, I telephoned Donald, another store work colleague who is mentioned on and off throughout the book. He was helpful and gave me some honest tips on what to look out for whilst there. We didn't mention the incident that happened that weekend. His advice turned out legit and aided me throughout the trip. When I went back to work that week, Sheltered Disability was in the canteen with personnel manager talking with the other brass. Seeing them was supposed to make me feel guilty, but I smiled at the other colleagues and brass as I walked by. I said, "Look, my friends are here to see me." By then, I had mastered enough of the pattern recognition and knew the drills like an iconic character in a soap opera such as Ian Beale in EastEnders. At the time, they conducted the meeting and I knew the game by then. It was more like a GP winding up session than anything. And the outcome was ridiculous. All they could produce is a total ban from attending social work events for 3 years and a £25 reimbursement for damaging a tablecloth. It was shortly after that I informed that I was going to leave. That got them. They humoured me on that and asked me where I was masterminding. To them, they thought they had me by the testicles. It was them or nothing. I told them about going to Australia and they all laughed and said that you'll never make it. Surprisingly, the disability bit kicked in, preventing instant dismissal. So I handed in my notice instead, like one does when a bad smell persists. Supposedly, as one of the faster workers, it would take some time to replace me. So I kept my job and didn't get gross misconduct. It was funny how things turned out. I was happily employed at the leisure centre as a casual lifeguard, wasn't happy at the store. It was also ironic that the disciplinaries received never resulted in losing my job. In a sense, it was like nauseating smell lingering that never went away. The staff at the store decided to play some funny games. They knew Donald and Tristan, who were work colleagues, had an enjoyable time in London on a previous encounter. So the staff decided, out of the fund committee, to put a poster on the wall advertising a trip to London. Strangely, only a handful of them put their names down and were older fossils which had personalities to match. Through the transitioning from the verdict, the managers were overly fake to me. Even the area manager, the boss of the store manager, took a big interest into my affairs with a long, pointy nose. I've forgotten her name, but this manager had an inquisitive mindset. It was a facade, of course, the one you would get if you managed to find a breakthrough in technology, and the personal assistant of the company would do anything to get their hands on it, including sleeping with the host, then later hang them out to dry. Then a week before I left, the notice board at the front of the store became filled up with jobs to fulfill various roles. The staff amongst themselves thought that was very strange, as the store was supposed to be cutting down on staff and not increasing them. It was the final week. I couldn't take the tedious momentum. There were customers who couldn't speak English, and instead of trying to understand them, I would walk away. This, of course, got me into trouble with the pricks. On several occasions, I couldn't be bothered to fish out an item at the bottom of a top-heavy drinks cage. I picked up the items and threw them, causing them to smash. The cleaner wasn't at all amused. By then, I was a loose cannon. The remaining few days I got paid for sitting in the canteen and doing nothing, and said, they said, could you work such or such a cage? I refused, and they never questioned it. They said, let's all work them together, which we did. I left the store after 10 years, with no gifts whatsoever. It was all fake. This is all emotional type of bullshit. Even the people who were close to me never made much effort, apart from Donald and Tristan, and who I collaborated with. I guess it's down to survival instinct of the paycheck and not being heard like. Cut the income source and suddenly people have a change of heart about their workplace. I spent the remainder of the 3 months working at the leisure centre, either as a lifeguard or assistant swimming teacher. The staff there gelled together and were pleased for me to have taken up more shifts. They offered me everything that was going: lifeguard overtime, gym inductions, swimming teaching, and assessing in staff training. I spent 3 months living there after leaving the store and took home more money. I didn't tell them my expedition until it was leaked from another source. In one of the swimming exams took, I failed at the practical element for the next stage. It was a practical element that had to be done. I paid my money and the swimming coach was appointed to assess me. It was then that my secret was out. The ASA, known as the Amateur Swimming Association, had told the coach that I was going to Australia. This took me back a bit. For them on, I had to be careful who I tell and confide with. As I got on with the instructor, she passed me, and that night I went to a nightclub that played heavy metal music into the early hours. My head hurt for a week after, and the tinnitus long after that. The days progressed. I occasionally met up with the store associates at local pubs and green areas, and had a weekend break with a work colleagues and their family. I recall going with Tristan's family to Great Yarmouth. I couldn't take it as they were dull compared to me. Their way of having an enlightening time is going to souvenir shops, eating junk food and binge watching movies. I was more introverted and decided to do my own thing and went for long walks along the pier. Counting down, I got the money I invested in an investment incentive schemes, which means the store can take a dividend and reinvest it. To my surprise, I would go to the bank and discover the balance to have an extra naught added on from the last withdrawn. I decided to work up to the last day at the leisure centre before going to Australia. The staff by then heard and bragged about my little encounter. I was emotionally shocked at the way they saw me off. In my whole time, I'd never seen someone receive so many leaving presents. I received the equivalent of £400 worth in total. One girl spent £100 on me out of her own pocket, and she was the hottest one there. Even a couple of lesbians before I left came running up to me and jokingly said that if I passed them in staff training, they would both sleep with me. Sadly, it never progressed from that. I left feeling overwhelmed, stopped off at my flat and dropped off the gifts. Got into my car, went to see my parents who were low key. I went up to my old bedroom, switched on the Mega Drive and played Mega Mania throughout the night. I didn't go to bed on the 20th or 21st of August. So it was into their car. Little was said along the way to Heathrow Airport. I paid for their parking ticket and they gave me £100. Waved back as I went to the departure lounge. I said to myself on Mind Loop, travelling is going to be like a breeze. I'm going to stroll into a profession I'm trained in and make lots of money. It was a reassuring thought, and it wasn't like I haven't planned in advance. Then I'm going to add it to my CVs and prove a fact to the people at home that I've proven the real world wrong. Before arriving, I thought, the right background and adamant to pursue a career as a fitness instructor. It was that superior attitude, thinking you were better than everyone else. Was it down to arrogance, apparently so. And if you were bold enough to try out new pursuits, you're going to have a story to tell years later. And who knows, you may be able to author a book upon them. And here is my verdict to the unbeknownst, and one is outside of mainstream society, and you can, if determined, can succeed in what I'm going to divulge. Personally, I was in for a rude awakening and upbeat. I couldn't relate to the lifestyles of those that had been on the road months and years before me. I turned my nose up at them and began to wonder if they were sane. Backpacking for the first time is like a new cadet. Being introduced to the armed forces, it's going to take some time to sass out. If done properly, you're going to have the time of your life. Not necessarily Disneyland, but stories that you will stay with you forever until you transition towards your deathbed, as written throughout. You're going to meet incredible people along the way and unique characters that have some amazing stories they are going to share with you. So stick it out, live within your means, get used to uncomfortable situations, and you will have memories of a lifetime. That's what they call growth. The backpacking theme is more like being a shelf stacker, doing repetitive tasks, finding work, and paying your way in life. It's no fairy tale holiday. Like anything, if you indulge in leisurely activities too often, you're going to have consequences. You will become irritated from lack of sleep and weird pornography. Witness poor behaviour and short fused. You may have to keep stunned if illegal activity happens around you. And like myself, you will experience unwanted attention. My best advice is to observe from afar and refer to a risk assessment, like a spy operating in enemy territory. Observing your surroundings and body language and navigating from using your inbuilt danger mechanisms, instincts. So shut the fuck up, and as the motto goes in Australia, get stuck in.